It's nearly 9 in the evening in Manila, and an entire country is gathered in front of screens instead of going to bed. Thousands of miles away in London, a 21-year-old left-hander is walking onto grass with something new stitched beside her name for the first time in her career, a seed number. 29, the first Filipina in history to carry one into a Grand Slam. And the surface she's about to compete on, fast, low, unforgiving to players who need time to load up their shots, might be the exact surface her whole game was quietly built for without anyone outside her camp fully realizing it yet. If you've been watching this story since before there was a seed next to her name, subscribe because we're covering this entire tournament match by match. Let's rewind about 3 weeks because the road into this match matters. Eala won her first WTA title on grass in Birmingham, coming through a tough 3-set final. Less than 2 weeks after that, she was in Berlin at a WTA 500 event, a significant step up in competition level, and she reached the semifinals there too, beating a ranked opponent comfortably along the way. Walking into Wimbledon Media Day, she talked about her preparation being centered on her own game rather than any single opponent, said she felt confident and ready, while acknowledging that everyone in a Grand Slam draw is dangerous. That word, ready, matters because the opponent waiting for her in round 1 wasn't some routine formality. Of all the players Wimbledon's draw could have handed her in the first round, it gave her Renata Zarazua of Mexico, ranked in the mid-70s, 28 years old, and the only player left in this entire bracket who already holds a head-to-head win over Eala. One previous meeting, one win, and it belongs to Zarazua. She didn't back into the main draw either. She qualified by beating a former US Open champion in straight sets, including a bagel set against a Grand Slam winner, then survived a tight 3-setter to punch her ticket in. This wasn't the soft opening round the seeding numbers might have suggested on paper. This was a dangerous, informed veteran with a psychological edge already banked against the Filipina across the net. And the people who've spent years arguing that a Clay Academy product could never translate her game onto grass had this exact match circled as the moment that argument would finally get proven right. Except that argument has been getting dismantled in real time for weeks now. Start with Birmingham. Eala didn't win that title comfortably. She dropped the first set of the final and had to grind her way back through a deciding set to close it out. First grass title of her career, and it came the hard way, which arguably makes it mean more, not less. Then Berlin happened a week later, a tier above Birmingham in terms of field strength, and the result barely changed. A ranked opponent beaten in straight sets, another dangerous player dispatched in the quarterfinal, a semi-final run in her first real trip to that event. The level of competition roughly doubled. Her results didn't drop off at all. Compress that timeline and look at what it actually says. Birmingham champion in early June. Berlin semi-finalist less than 2 weeks later, featured by Wimbledon's own official channels heading into her first Grand Slam as a seeded player, and then walking onto Wimbledon grass ranked in the low 30s, seeded 29th, on the one surface where her game finally makes obvious sense to people who haven't been watching her closely for years. Because here's the technical detail that a lot of casual coverage keeps missing. Eala plays left-handed. She hits flat rather than looping heavy topspin. She takes the ball early, on the rise, redirecting an opponent's pace back at them instead of manufacturing her own power from deep behind the baseline. That specific combination, a compact, flat-hitting lefty who steals time from opponents by taking the ball early, is essentially the same technical template that's produced multiple Wimbledon champions in the past. Low skidding bounces on grass reward exactly that kind of game and punish baseline grinders who need a full swing to generate pace. This isn't a clay court player awkwardly adapting to a surface she doesn't belong on. This is a player whose game was arguably always going to translate here once she got the reps in to prove it. Anyone who watched her push through a brutal 3-set final at Eastbourne last year, saving championship points before eventually losing a tight tiebreak, already suspected this. The blueprint was visible a year ago to anyone paying close attention. The rest of the tennis world is only now catching up to something Filipino tennis fans have apparently been saying for years. And when major international outlets start including her name on their short lists of players to watch at this tournament, right alongside the usual group of established top 10 names, that's not generous hometown coverage. That's the wider tennis press finally doing the math everyone else already did. There's one more name worth bringing into this story, because it carries real weight. He's won 22 Grand Slam titles, 2 of them right here at Wimbledon, as the most successful left-handed player in the history of men's tennis. He's also the founder of the Academy in Mallorca, where Eala has trained since she was 13 years old, and the brother of the coach who's guided her development closely throughout. According to multiple reports earlier this year, Rafael Nadal himself has reportedly begun personally advising her directly. Sit with that for a second. the most decorated left-hander to ever play the sport, someone who spent 2 decades solving exactly the kind of surface transitions Eala is navigating right now, chose to put his own time into her game. That's not a sponsor issuing a nice quote for a press release, that's one of the greatest players in history quietly handing a 21-year-old some of what he spent his whole career figuring out. Now zoom out, because the scale of what's actually happening here goes past one match. Tennis has never had a Filipino ranked inside the top 30. The Philippines has never produced a seeded Grand Slam singles player in either the men's or women's draw in the sport's entire history. Southeast Asia as a whole has watched the WTA invest heavily in China and Japan for well over a decade without a single organically developed top 30 women's player emerging from anywhere in the region. Tonight, on whatever outer court the tournament assigns her, that drought is on the line. If she wins, round 2 lands within roughly 48 hours, and analysts are already describing her section of the draw as one of the more explosive quarters in the tournament, with a dangerous seeded opponent potentially waiting by round 3. Win that too, and a meaningful chunk of Wimbledon's second week starts to belong, at least partly, to a player from Quezon City. And every result she racks up here doesn't just matter for this tournament, it feeds directly into her ranking trajectory heading toward the next Olympic cycle, an event where Philippine tennis has never had a credible medal contender in living memory. The next several weeks already have real markers on the calendar beyond this match. Wimbledon's opening round tonight, a hard-court event in Washington later this summer. Then the North Americans swing through Cincinnati and into the US Open. Each one is effectively a referendum on whether Birmingham and Berlin represented her ceiling or just the floor she's now building from. There's one thing worth being honest about here too, because this story shouldn't skip past it. During that Berlin semifinal loss, some fans and clip accounts flagged what looked like a concerning moment involving her arm, visible discomfort, some shaking out of the elbow mid-match. There was no official medical timeout announced and no public statement from her team afterward. She simply finished the match, lost it, and moved on to her next commitment. 10 days later, on Wimbledon's media day, what she chose to share publicly wasn't anything about that moment. It was a line she'd written for herself on a personal vision board months earlier and posted online. Something about no longer playing scared of losing, and instead playing free, trusting herself fully. That's not the messaging of a player quietly nursing an injury into a major tournament out of necessity. That's someone who had already decided well before tonight exactly who she wanted to be when matches got tight. So here's where things actually stand heading into tonight. A Birmingham title, a Berlin semifinal against a significantly tougher field, international outlets naming her as a player to watch, a direct endorsement in the form of personal coaching time from arguably the greatest left-handed player the sport has ever produced, a seed next to her name for the first time in Philippine tennis history, and a flat, early contact lefty game that reads almost like it was designed specifically for this surface. The people who doubted that translation had years to be proven right. Birmingham and Berlin have made that argument very hard to keep making with a straight face. Whatever happens tonight against Zarazua specifically, the larger case is already close to settled. This game belongs on grass. The only real question left is how far this particular run carries her. So here's the challenge. Drop your prediction in the comments and actually commit to a number. Second round exit, fourth round quarterfinal, or are you confident enough to call this a genuine tournament upset run before a single ball's been struck tonight? Put your stake down now, because in 2 weeks that comment is either going to be a receipt or a regret, and there's no deleting it after the fact. If you've been following Alex Eala since before there was ever a seed next to her name, subscribe and stay with us through every round of this draw. We'll have round 1 reaction up within hours of the final point, the round 2 preview the moment the bracket clears, and every twist this fortnight throws at her covered here first, because the people who saw this game translate to grass before anyone else deserve to be first to know what happens next.